Chapter 4. The roundfish, herrings, and viviparous fish. The roundfish. Color, yellowish brown, paler on the sides and belly than on the back. Scale, bright and glittering, each edged with a narrow border of gray dark. Cheeks, fins, and tail, a deeper tint of the same color as that on the head. Head 1/6 of the length without the caudal. Mouth very small, under jaw shorter than the upper, no teeth perceptible. This fish has a very wide geographical range, being found as far north as the Mackenzie and Coppermine rivers, east of the Rocky Mountains in latitude of 49 degrees north. The western side, how much further they range north of 49 degrees, I had no opportunity of judging. This handsome and delicious fish, one of the salmonidae, is one most valuable as an article of food to the Indians west of the Rocky Mountains. The whitefish, or Atuhameg, which means reindeer of the sea, being of like importance to those residing east of the mountains. There the Indians frequently have to subsist entirely on whitefish, and at many times of the fur trading stations, the traders get very little else to eat during the 9 months of the 12. In one small lake, Lake St. Anne's, near Fort Edmonton, 40,000 whitefish were taken at an average weight of 3 to 4 pounds in the course of 3 weeks. Two modes are adopted for preserving them. One, that of sun drying, the other by freezing, in which state they may be kept perfectly sweet and free from taint for the whole winter. The roundfish is seldom taken over 2 pounds in weight, and prior to spawning they are loaded with fat, which on the shoulders almost amounts to a hump, but becomes thin, watery, and insipid after the all-important duty of providing for their offspring is accomplished. I am not quite sure when they return to the sea, as nothing is seen of them after the ice sets in. Towards the end of November, until their arrival on the following year, the ova are deposited in much the same way as that of other salmonidae. A hollow made in the gravel contains the eggs and milt, which are covered over and abandoned. The young fish, on its emergence from the egg, taking care of itself as best it can. One may journey a long way to witness a prettier or more picturesque sight than roundfish harvesting on the sun-masked prairie. The prairie, bright and lovely, the grass fresh green and waving lazily, various wildflowers peeping covily out from their cozy hiding places, seem making the most of the summer. A fresh, joyous hilarity everywhere, pervading even Indians whose lodges in great numbers lie scattered about. From the edges of the pine forest where the little streams came out from the dark shadows into the sunshine, up to the lake. The prairie was like a fair. Indians, old and young, chiefs, braves, squaws, children, and slaves, were alike busy in capturing the roundfish. They were swarming up the streams in thousands. So thick were they that baits and traps were thrown aside, and hands and baskets and little nets and wooden bowls did the work. It was only requisite to stand in the stream and bail out the fish. Thousands were dying, thousands have been eaten, and as many more were wasting and decomposing on the bank. Imposing every fish, escaping the Indians, otters, and the various enemies that it meets with in this ascending rivers, succeeded in depositing in its ova. Where or how they find room to spawn, or what becomes of the offspring is more than I know. Roundfish are cured by splitting and sun drying, precisely in the same manner as salmon. I have had very good sport angling for roundfish. By using a rough, gaudy fly, they rise readily and struggle obstinately when hooked, but soon give up. Turning up their size, they permit themselves to be dragged upon the bank without attempting a flap of resistance. Some of these fish remain permanently, or at any rate for some time. In fresh water, I have often taken them in the Nahualpika River, to get into which they have leaped the Kettle Fall during a high flood, being quite 800 miles from the sea. And as they are caught in the spring, I think it fair to conclude they do not invariably return to the sea after spawning. Herrings. The Vancouver Island herring. Head about 1/5 of the total length of the body. Slender is shape and profile somewhat fusiform. Back bright steel blue color, shading away on the sides to brilliant silvery white. Fins yellow white but uniform in color. Posterior extremity of maxillary bone extending to a vertical line drawn through the middle of the orbit. Eye subcircular, large color, copper red and freshly caught fish. Anterior margin of the dorsal fin, nearer the extremity of the snout than the insertion of the caudal. The average length is somewhat about 10 inches. Indian name along the coast, Stole, Skagit, Indian, Losi. There are 3 distinct herring arrivals, one beginning in February and March. These fish are small and somewhat lean. About the beginning of April, the run commences. These are finer, full of spawn, and in high conditions in June and July and extending through the summer. Small shoals occasionally make their appearance, but never as fine as April 5th. Toward the middle of April, herring legions commence arriving from seaward in real earnest. Brigade follows brigade in rapid succession until every bay, harbor, inlet, and estuary and lagoon is literally alive with them. Close in the rear as the camp followers hang on the skirts of an army come shoals of dogfish, salmon, and fish-eating seabirds. I have often seen a shoal of herrings when hotly pursued by the dogfish dash into the little rock-bound nook. The water lashed into white spray by 1,000 tails and fins, plied with all the power and energy the poor struggling fish could exert to escape the dreaded foe. A wall of rocks right and left ahead, the shelving shingle, on they go, and hundreds lie high and dry, panting on the pebbles. It is just as well perhaps to die there, as to be torn, bitten, and eaten by the puritanical cannibals that are waging fearful havoc on the imprisoned shoal. The dogfish wound 10 times as many as they eat, and having satiated and gorged their greedy stomachs, swim lazily away, leaving the dead, dying, and disabled to the tender mercies of the seabirds watching the battle, ever ready to pounce upon the unprotected and end its miseries. Garnering the herring crop is the coast Indian's best sea harvest. Lodges spring up like mushrooms along the edges of the bay and harbors. Large fleets of canoes dot the water in every direction, their swarthy crews continually loading them with glittering fish paddling ashore. They hand the cargo to the female part of the community, and then start again for a similar freight. Indians have various plans for catching herons. Immense numbers are taken with small hand nets, literally dipping them out of the water into the canoes. They also employ the rake, and already described as used for taking candlefish. One savage sitting in the stern of the canoe, paddling along, keeping in the herring shoal. Another having the rounded part of the rake firmly affixed in both hands, sweeps in through the crowded fish from the before aft, using all his force. Generally speaking, every tooth has a herring impaled on it, sometimes 3 or 4. It is astonishing how rapidly an Indian will fix his canoe with herrings, using this rude and primitive contrivance. A wholesale system of capture is practiced in Puget Sound, Point Discovery, and Port Townsend, where lace mudflats run out for long distances into the sea, which are left quite dry at low tide. Across these flats, Indians make long dams of latticework, having here and there openings like our salmon traps, allowing herrings to pass easily in, but preventing the return. Shoal after shoal pass through these gates, but are destined never to go back to their briny home. It is not at all uncommon to take from 2 to 3 tons of fish at one tide by this simple but ingenious method.